I know the whole drill.
Okay, cool.
I've done a lot of these.
Great.
So
Perfect.
I know it too.
How do you define independent movies?
It's so funny. People's definition of independent movies is so all over the map. The way I see it in this convoluted business now, it really comes from the vision of the filmmaker and how much control is actually in the hands of the filmmaker as opposed to the hands of the financiers. So I really think an independent film is defined by a filmmaker who finds the money themselves and has a creative vision that they are able to be in control of, rather than, say, a big budget studio movie that's based on a franchise where the producers and the director and whatnot are sort of at the hands of the studio calling the shots. So, for example, if you really want to get technical, most films are independently produced. It just depends on where the source of funding is. In fact, most of the studios today actually work with outside production companies that they then fund their movies. I know it's complicated. I'm definitely overcomplicating it, but the bottom line is an independent film is defined by who is in control of making the movie, not necessarily where the money comes from.
So it has to do more with, to maybe put words in your mouth, does it have to do more with then how much of a singular vision it is in terms of authorship?
It really does have a lot to do with how much control the filmmaker has over the vision and the final product. How much control they have over the finished movie.
Okay. How familiar are you with the comics industry?
I love that. Yeah, I'm very familiar with the comics industry. Yeah.
So how would you say that compares to independent comics? Do you think independent media in general reflects more of an
Yeah, I think a lot of it, independent media, I think that the biggest problem with independent media has to do with distribution and access from the creative person who has made the thing, music, film, comic book, novel, whatever, and then getting that to the audience. Traditionally, there's been lots of screens between that, right? There are distributors that get the book, CD, DVD to the retailers and the stores, and there's all sorts of middlemen in there, where basically you're making a product that costs very little money, and when it gets to the end at retail, it's 10 times what it actually physically costs to manufacture. I think where artists can really look to get more control and less of those middlemen and more direct access to their audience and filtering them out, it's really going to be how they reach out and how they market themselves and taking those middlemen out. I don't know if I answered that. I went off on a couple tangents.
I think so.
I went off on a lot of tangents, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was, but do you need to get...
Oh, that's my cell phone. I'm not going to answer it.
Okay.
I'm just going to let that buzz. It's going to buzz for a few seconds, then it'll be over.
All right.
Let's just, but give me the next question, fire away, and I'll get ready to... you know what, I really started to go off on a tangent. Should I go back to comic books? And
Well, I'll try to bring it back.
Yeah, bring it back to comics, and I can restate that more as a comic books question, because,
Well, it has, a lot of the comics book people I'm talking to, and I'm segueing back and forth between comics and film in this, and so I'm trying to basically bring out the people that are interested in independent film,
mm-hmm.
and are trying to find more stories where they're actually interested in visual media.
Mm-hmm. let
them know that there are comic books available that will suit their...
Oh, absolutely.
There's a wide...
I mean, to me, it's... I'm a big fan of comics. I mean, you know what? I like the superhero stuff. I think that's great. I dig it. When there's a great writer involved in a superhero comic, it's worth reading. For the most part, though, I love the independent comics. Your Peter Baggy, your Dan Clowes, your Joe Matt, your Chester Brown, the classics. And, I'm just a big fan of those because it really is a vision coming from them. They've written illustrated right directly to the reader. There's very little screens between them and their audience in terms of people meddling in their creative vision. I mean, and for the most part, they're put out by publishers. They're independent publishers that struggle to get by. You know, your Fantagraphics, your Last Gasps. I have boxes of them. So I love reading those. I hate, you know, when you mention comics, there's a lot of people have an attitude about that. You can call them graphic novels, whatever it is. But it's a form that I think is so important. It's been great to see some of these things actually translate into movies. You know, Dan Clowes and his career with Ghost World and his relationship with Terry Zwigoff is just perfect. It really is a testament to the great writing.
Now, and you've been an independent publisher, you're an independent filmmaker. Why go that route? What necessitates going the independent route?
I think the reason to actually independently do any kind of art project, because I've, you know, independently published a magazine, have a DVD distribution label, and we put out movies on DVD. You know, the reason to go about it is quite simply to have that control over what you're trying to say to your audience without a bunch of filters or a board of directors telling you, you know, you might not want to say this because you might upset an advertiser. I think I am the king of shooting myself in the foot. You know, in terms of, I could be a lot more successful financially if I just bent over a little once in a while. You know, bent over. You know, maybe it's just a finger. Maybe it's just a little finger. Maybe it's two fingers. Maybe it's a whole fist. Suddenly, it's a bukkake with my ass. That's the way I feel if I were to, you know, bend over to serve the interests of, you know, some advertiser or some studio that's upset about a review. Frankly, I don't give a fuck. All right? I don't care. I have a website that speaks directly to an audience that's come to trust Film Threat. You know, with the independent films that we've released on DVD, these are movies that would never have been released otherwise. And we're partnering with the filmmakers to help put them out. You know, we don't even get the rights to the movies. It's a very loose deal with the filmmakers. So I'm all about, you know, artists' rights and protecting that. And I just think that the less of those filters you have, the less you're beholden to a board of directors and financiers and whatnot. I think the more interesting the final result will be. I'm not going to say it's going to always be great, because there's a lot of independent films, comics, music out there that suck ass. But I find that work much more intriguing. I think there is less of an excuse to fail with a studio-produced project on any level, only because all the resources and money is there. You better be really good, because you have no excuse to fail. On an independent level, you know what? I like it a little bit rough around the edges. I like the fact that Clerks, a personal favorite film of mine, probably has some of the worst cinematography you've ever seen. I mean, it's pretty god-awful looking 16 millimeter. But I like that. I like it because it feels real. It doesn't feel false. It doesn't feel, you know, like these guys have all this makeup on and glitzy, and, you know, it feels more real. That's part of its success, part of the look, and part of what makes Clerks succeed is the fact that it feels so real, because it is a little rough around the edges. In fact, I remember seeing Mallrats. Kevin Smith had brought Mallrats to the San Diego Comic-Con in rough cut form. It was like 20 minutes longer, and it was a rough cut where you could see the splices, and it was scratchy, and the color wasn't timed, and it looked like crap, and I thought it was awesome because it was so rough around the edges, and because it had that grainy, scratchy, you know, just got it wet from the lab, crappy feel, you know? I love that.
So you're almost saying, like, interesting is more intriguing than good.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, Yeah, well, interesting is actually kind of a cop out in terms of a compliment. I hate that word.
Oh.
I mean, I hate that. I hate the word interesting because to say that is to not have an opinion. Interesting doesn't put you anywhere. Interesting is here. You know, brilliant, amazing is here. Suck ass and crap is here. Interesting is not saying anything. I should not use the word interesting. Note to self: don't use the word interesting. It sucks. But you know what I mean? What I love, I should the correct word to use is risk. When it comes to independent projects, independent art, music, film, comics, whatever, there's a risk that's being taken by the creative person involved. They've said, you know what? No one hired me to do this. I don't have a job independent filmmaker. I don't have a job musician. I don't have a job comic artist. That is not a job. That is something that someone gets up every day and decides to do. They make a choice. They get up and say, I'm going to write a book. They get up and say, I'm going to do a website. They get up and say, I'm going to make a film. That's not a job. I can't remember the last time I had a job. I get hired to do things every once in a while, but it's usually for such a very short time. I'm lucky I get out of it quickly. But the projects that I choose to do, the ones I put my name on, are ones I decided I should do. I'm going to do this project. And that it's a different personality. It's not something they teach in school. Because what school is intended to train people to have a job. The work that I do, I was never trained for. In fact, when I think back, most of it has to do with media that I experienced or books I read on my own that were not things that, anyone told me I had to do for any class.
But still, those books didn't give you that drive or interest.
That's true. Yes, the books you can read a jillion books, and it's not going to create the mindset. It's not going to create the drive, the ambition, the passion. That's what you really need is the passion. Although when it comes to the bad independent projects at any level, there's a lot of passion, but not a lot of talent. That can happen sometimes.
Where do you think that passion comes from? Other than,
if I could answer where passion comes from, I would love to tell you the secret. I have no idea. I really think you're born with it. One thing, I have no athletic skill. So I think passion, athletic skill, people who are super duper intelligent and smart, I think they're born with it. I really think there's not anything, something in the DNA, the creative makeup, some environment involved. But I think that a lot of these things are inherent in personality and cannot be taught. I can learn certain things about how to raise money or how to do a certain aspect of filmmaking or marketing or whatever. I can buy books and learn all that stuff. What drives me, what makes me who I am. That's didn't read about that. I just always wanted to do it. Can't explain.
Okay. Do we still half hours?
Oh yeah, fine. We're fine.
Okay.
As long as the questions are interesting.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to. I boiled it down to the most interesting.
Good.
So then, you get up in the morning. You decide, I'm going to make a film today. I'm a filmmaker today. Well,
no.
I'm just
I like where you're going.
Okay.
I can see where you're going with this.
Why do it at all?
Oh my God, that's a good question. Why do it is because why I do it because if I didn't do it, I would be dead. I might actually be breathing, and I might have organs that function, and I might go through all those biological processes like consuming food and then expelling it in various solid and liquid forms, and that's a form of living, but I would be dead. I have a drive and need to create and to express myself, and I can't explain it. If I did not do it, I would be dead.
Okay, I haven't gotten that answer yet. uh,
Of course, I mean dead in a metaphorical sense, not actually dead. I would be. Existence would be merciless. It would just be torture to be alive and not be able to address the list of projects I plan to do before I am physically dead. I got to get through that list. It's a long list. Books I intend to write, film projects I intend to do. Yeah, it's a long list that I got to get through.
okay. How? So you mentioned briefly when you were talking about the importance of being an independent artist. You mentioned briefly creator rights.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
How important are those to you, and where do you see that falling into the realm of what drives somebody to remain independent versus?
I mean, creative rights is it's the most important thing to any artist. Is absolutely holding on to those creative rights. I think you'll end up with the best project at the end of the day, the best film. I mean, if you've got that singular vision.
Do you mean you said it is the most important thing?
It is.
Do you mean
Yeah.
it should be the most important?
Yeah.
thing?
Yes.
Because there are a lot of people that will sell their ideas for $5,000 flat and not worry about residuals or anything like that.
But creative rights is extremely important. I mean, also having some kind of business savvy. This is why I wrote my book on film festivals, because I met a lot of creative filmmakers that didn't know what they were doing. They had no clue what they were doing, and they needed some kind of just some basic information about, look, here's the list of things to come to a film festival with. Here's what you need to sort of put on your agenda of things to do when you go to a film festival. Do you even know why you're at a film festival? The benefits to being at a film festival? Getting feedback from audiences, which is extremely important to any artist, is to get feedback from an audience, to have them experience the art and then be able to get feedback from that to actually, feedback to an artist is like air. You need it to breathe. You need it to go, oh, yeah, oh, okay, good. Now I see, like, oh, okay, the next project, I'm gonna go another level, plus 10 experience points for me, but it's also, I began to notice that the filmmakers who often had the business savvy, but the less successful creative films succeeded. That bothered me. And I thought, well, I'm gonna take all the knowledge that these business savvy guys have, and I'm just gonna make it available to anybody. So no one had ever written a book like that at the time. And I just feel it's important that the information be out there, and then the best stuff will bubble to the surface. But it'll be an even playing field because people at least have access to this information. They know what they should be doing. So, and I recently did a book on how to put out your own independent movie on DVD independently and distribute it to stores with every phone number and address you could possibly need, of every distributor, of every retailers, all the contact information. Like, here it is. Okay, now go do it. Doesn't mean that your film is going to be out on DVD in any of these stores or with any of these distributors, but you have the information. The most important thing is to make a great film. Make a great film first. All these other things tend to come to you, But it does, for some projects, because independent films tend to be risky ventures anyways, it takes, I can repeat that.
Okay.
Because it's probably going to fuck you up a little.
I saw that. They were asking some of the same questions I was asking in regards to film. So, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind continuing to pursue it. Each person I interview, I'm getting more.
Yeah,
more
I hate
information.
it's weird with documentaries where it's like you start out with one thing and then it just goes into
I knew that's what would happen though, so it's just. So we were talking about intellectual property rights and
Yeah, you need to. I mean, yeah, and I mentioned the festival book and just
right.
having business savvy. It's just important. Any artist that is serious artist needs to have some business savvy. I want to punch an artist that I hear say, "I just want to get it out there. I just want people to see it. I just want to get it out there." Well, you know what? Put on your flower shoes and your wings and float around, and you can just give your thing away, because then it has no value. That's stupid. That's absolutely stupid. You need to be savvy when it comes to business, which means you're probably going to have a friend who's a lawyer. I know that sucks. Those people are, smarter than you about certain things, but lawyers that are on your side can be your best friend. I mean, they're amazing. They will be fighting for you, and they're going to make sure that a company that's going to come in and distribute or do or partner with you in any way is going to make sure that you are treated fairly. So I mean, there've been a lot of cases of artists who've had to go and sue the companies they worked for just to get their due. My God, Stan Lee had to sue Marvel Comics over profits from the movies, characters he was involved in creating, for the most part. I mean, it kills me how artists are routinely discarded and treated badly. I mean, it's almost, I mean, it's ridiculous to me. How people are treated in this business, especially the movie business as well, where people just say, "Look, I'm not going to pay you." I mean, I had a deal with IFC. I had to sue them over money they told me that I was owed, in a contract, and they just decided, "We're just not going to pay you." Oh, really? It says here you're supposed to. A few heated exchanges between attorneys, and I got about 80% of what those motherfuckers at IFC owed me. Yeah, but I would not say the motherfuckers at IFC. There's a lot of good people at IFC. The real fucker there is a guy named Evan Shapiro, who is a liar. And the great thing is he can try and sue me for saying that, but I have it all in writing how he lied. How that fucker, that little Napoleon motherfucker, Evan Shapiro at IFC, lied. I can prove it. I can prove it.
So, I
don't know if you want to use that. It's kind
I
of
probably won't use that.
Yeah, it'd be great. Maybe that's over the credits at the end. But look, I think it's important to be specific and to talk about specific instances. We can talk generally, because I can talk out my ass. I can talk out my ass for hours about all of these topics. I think what you want to get is you really want specific stories. Give me an example. What happened to you? With what project, when, and what battle, and what was the result, and what happened? I'm coaching you on how to make your own documentary.
Okay.
I know I shouldn't do that, but I like where you're going. But the thing is that I could sit down and I could watch a 2-hour thing of people just speaking in broad terms, and broad terms doesn't mean shit. What happened to me? Did I have any fights with the executive producers for my big fat independent movie over the direction of this film? You bet your fucking ass I did. And you bet that I stood my ground on certain things, and I shut down the website for a month battling those assholes, telling them you're making a stupid mistake, and you better not fuck with me, because I have the power to pull the plug on this thing. So yeah, those are not fun things to do, and unfortunately, artists are, for the most part, really nice people. Really nice, giving, and trusting people, which is dumb. You have to err on the side of a little bit of paranoia. A little bit of paranoia is not so bad. So, and you have to fight those battles and choose them wisely. Look, I mean, you don't want to be, I mean, there are some people that are just, unmanageable because, they're, beyond paranoid. But I think it's important that, if you're getting pushed and it doesn't feel right, you do that gut check. The gut check is the best way to go. And the gut check to me, if it ain't feeling right, we're having a conversation about it. So I have no qualms about being a prick when I need to be, but only when I'm pushed. I'll honor a bad deal to keep my word rather than make a stink. I don't care. It's like we have a contract, gave my word, then I have to do it. But then someone starts to break their word and their then we're going to have a conversation, and hopefully the conversation goes well, because if it doesn't, then there'll be lawyers involved and whatnot, and that's never fun. That's the part of that's the part of filmmaking, that's the part of being an author and writing novels, that's the part of writing comic books, it's the part of making music that is not exciting or sexy or fun to talk about, is the part where you deal with business. And the people who are the most successful artists are good at dealing in business. If, for example, George Lucas, if he had never made a film, would be one of the most important people in cinema history for his innovations, for everything he pioneered, if he'd never made a film. And his films, hey, we can argue about George Lucas's films, till we're blue in the face, who cares? He is an incredibly savvy business person. And he changed the industry. So it's important to recognize the importance of not just the artistic innovators, but the people who were innovative in business.
So
creating new business models, I think, helps move things forward. Whether it be the independent film business, which didn't exist, that market had to be created. There was no such thing in the 80s of an independent film section in the video store. It didn't exist. That wasn't a term anybody used. No one said, hey, I'm going to go see an independent film. There were B movies, there were midnight movies, there were cult movies, there were alternative movies, there were lots of little segments, but there wasn't independent film as a broad term. Independent film exploded in 1989 when Sex, Lies, and Videotape, a film which was intended to be some direct-to-video exploitation movie, was done by a filmmaker named Steven Soderbergh, who took it to the Sundance Film Festival, and then it sold to Miramax, went to Cannes and was a huge sensation at the Cannes Film Festival, and this little $1 million direct-to-video intended to be an exploitation movie became one of the best films of 1989 and grossed $10 million at the box office. And that was a shift. That to me was the birth of independent film in the mainstream moviegoer's consciousness. It's also the very first year that the United States Film Festival changed its name to the Sundance Film Festival. So the organizers, Robert Redford and the organizers of the Sundance Institute, took over the United States Film Festival in Little Park City, Utah, a mountain ski resort town. And, Sex, Lies, and Videotape played there. And that financial success, the financial success of that movie made people sit up and take notice. And that's when independent film was really born, was that year. And now, with the success of, God, so many independent films since, and so many careers, everyone from Kevin Smith, Darren Aronofsky, Christopher Nolan, Richard Linklater, on and on and on, their success really brought independent film to mainstream moviegoers and has made independent film part of a moviegoer's regular diet, I like to say. I mean, it's like, look, you go to the movies and, I feel like an action movie, I feel like a romantic comedy, I feel like seeing a sci-fi. You know what? I think I feel like seeing an independent film. No one said that before 1989. Now it's grown, and more recently, documentaries have exploded. Now you can go to a multiplex and see a documentary. That's kick-ass. That's progress. That's things going in the right direction for me, and that's the artists who are behind those films getting that kind of distribution and that kind of recognition is exciting. It shows to me why mainstream Hollywood box office grosses are continuing to erode. Because the sameness of that by the numbers action movie I've seen 50 frickin' times, the sameness is wearing out. It's wearing out. And I don't show me the same. Show me something new. Don't show me the sequel. Give me something I've never seen before. Don't give me another, the long line in the franchise spin-off. I don't care. Don't give me a TV remake. Give me something independent, something exciting, something different, something new, something from an emerging filmmaker, a passionate new voice. That's what I want to see.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm going off on
Good.
tangents, but
no,
I'm also
you're,
thinking
you're hitting all these points, and
that
and
yeah. Now you don't have to
that's-
ask half your questions.
Well, I have to go back though and ask you. You were mentioning ask about specific stories. Well, what I'm getting at here is more the creative end of things. So how did dealing with the business aspect of the business problems, creative rights problems, how does that affect your ability to create new things?
That is my greatest frustration, is having to deal with business aspects of the things I create. I would love to be stuck in a room and just write all day, or be shooting a film. I'd love to do that, but that's not the reality. The reality is, in order to really succeed, you have to, you got to get good at that business stuff. And believe me, even if you have someone who handles those aspects for you, you're going to have conversations with that person. You're going to have to sign things. You're going to have meetings with people that you don't like, but you have to work with. I mean, hopefully you end up liking them. Hopefully they like your stuff.
Do you have any tricks that you used in order to?
Yes, I have specific tricks. Yes, the tricks that I use to avoid that is I don't answer my phone before noon. I hate the phone. I hate the phone. I think it's a horrible device because it's an intrusion to me. It means, you know what? I feel like calling this guy. I'm just going to call him and interrupt whatever he's doing because I have to talk to him. You know what? I don't need to talk to you. I'm working on something. I don't want to talk to you. So up until noon, I do not answer my phone. I will look at email in the morning just to see if things are, there's something important or pressing. And then I stop, and for 3 hours, I'm creative. Even 3 hours is like a luxury these days. But for 3 hours, I can focus and be creative. And then I got to deal with all that crap, and I'm taking phone calls in the afternoon and whatnot. But I prefer my communication to be by email, not because I dislike people. I love to talk to people. Believe me, we could talk for like 2 hours about all this stuff. In fact, you get me on the phone, we'll talk for hours. We'll talk forever because I love to talk to people. That's my downfall, But in order for me to remain focused, I have to have that time away. I prefer email because it's a more efficient way for me to communicate. Most of the questions and things I have to deal with are very simple. And I can answer 500 emails a day, but I can't do 5 phone calls because I get too wrapped up in the conversation. Usually it's people I want to talk to. But I have structured my life in a certain way that allows me to be creative and deal with those business aspects. So I'm very regimented. I get up early in the morning. I'm creative first. And then when I get tired towards the later part of the day, then when I'm tired, it doesn't matter because a lot of the business stuff I have to do is I can just do it any time. I don't need to be on to do the business stuff. I just need to be awake. So yeah.
Okay. So have you found then that in compartmentalizing like that, your creative side doesn't suffer? Then?
Yes, I would say that my creative side definitely suffers from having to deal with all of these business aspects. Oh crap! I'm sorry, man. We'll redo that. Okay. Am I in the frame right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, your art is going to suffer when you have to deal with business. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. I just tend to be very regimented, very scheduled. I just have lots of lists. These are the things I have to do, and here's the deadline. How many words? What's the deadline? When do I have to do this? What's the deadline? I'm all about the deadline. The deadline, I hate the deadline, but I need the deadline because the deadline gets me to where I need to be. But I love getting, the main thing is creatively, I have to get in the zone. That's the tough thing, especially when it comes to writing. I'm sure when it comes to any aspect of being creative, you need the space to get in the zone. When I'm in the zone, it's something that can't be explained. It's like basically, the words escape my fingers like tapping on a piano. It just comes out of me. And I love that. I love getting in the zone and you're writing and you're just, I love that. You need the ability to be able to mentally put yourself in that zone, the creative zone. I think athletes do it when they're like, basketball players, when they're hitting it every time they get near the basket, they hit the basket, they're in the zone. You know, when an artist is incredibly creative, they'll go through these creative periods. You know, musicians where it's like, God, that first album was so amazing. It was so passionate. It came such from the heart. You know, they were in the zone. And then the second album usually sucks. Then they recapture it from that failure. But you know, I think that any artist needs to be able to get in the zone where they're able to focus their creative energy specifically on exactly what the task is without any marketing or business interests and whatnot, and just create unfiltered.
So we've been dancing around this then. Do you think the independent media and kind of allow that? The more independent you are, the more.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like, look, yeah.
But do you think then does that foster creativity?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think when you're independent and you're doing art independently, you definitely don't have to think about what the concerns are. It doesn't mean that independent artists can't work within a studio system. There's certainly, some of them have been able to do it very successfully. Richard Linklater makes a film for himself, and then he'll do a studio film like The Bad News Bears. But then he'll go and do Waking Life, you know, or Before Sunrise or something like that, a film more for him. And I really admire that about Linklater. I mean, to me, the guy's got the ultimate career. But I think also sometimes adversity helps artists be more creative. For example, you know, I think that, you know, David Lynch working, you know, at ABC doing Twin Peaks, he was unable to do a lot of things he wanted to do. And having those, you know, those constraints helped him be more creative. You know, John Kricfalusi, when he was doing Ren and Stimpy for Nickelodeon, you know, they wouldn't let him use the word booger. So he came up with, well, forget it, we'll use the word nose goblin. You know, that's creative, that's cool. So having some kind of restraint from some outside evil force, it's not always evil, you know, but, you know, that can actually help an artist, you know. God, I think some of the best punk rock was, you know, written when Reagan was president, you know. He was the person he was the guy you could all hate and you could complain about him. Not a lot of great punk rock was done when Clinton was in office. You know? In fact, now that I think about it, a lot of crappy music happened when Clinton was in office. You know? I mean, you need, you know, an evil Republican in office that liberal artists, because for the most part artists are liberal, can despise and hate to create good art. I'm only being a little facetious, just a little facetious, but you see where I'm going with that.
Yeah,
you
definitely.
know, having that like them, it's the studio, it's the suits, it's the business guys, it's the government, it's censorship, it's this. You know what? If that helps you be more creative, great. That's awesome, you know? And that's a whole other issue. The whole censorship and banning and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah,
That's a tangent that you can't explore in this. That's a subject for a whole other.
Right.
So I don't have a lot more time. How close are we?
I have 3 more questions. I can just go
rattle them off.
To the last.
Or well, what are they?
Well, how did you support yourself when obviously you weren't supporting yourself doing your independent stuff when you started? So how did you support yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I, like a lot of people who got started, I had what I like to call a McJob, which is a job I don't care about that serves my personal interests so I can do what I really care about. The job I had, which was awesome, I worked at a video store, and I was so rude to customers because I was suggesting movies that I thought that they would like, and I would criticize their movie choices when they would bring them back, like, you know, God, how could you watch that piece of crap, the Dudley Moore movie? Wait, John Waters is who you want to see. Finally, they said, look, Chris, you can't work at the counter anymore. You know, the customers hate you. So what I did is the job I had was transferring home movies to videotape. And it was in the back of Thomas Video in Royal Oak, Michigan. I would turn on the Super 8 or 8mm projector and I would transfer people's home movies. Now, when I did that, I'd love when I put on like an 800-foot reel with like 40 minutes, I would just work on Film Threat and I would work on my own projects. I would work on movies. So it was a great job because it gave me the flexibility to you know, do all the other creative stuff I wanted to do. So I think it's important to find that job. You know, I mean, look, if you know, Kafka can work at a bank and write, you know, a novel, I mean, why not? You know, I mean, I think that's the only way to get started. Unless you are independently wealthy, which I will let you in on a little secret. Lots of independent filmmakers are trust fund kids and people who have a lot of money because they have the luxury of being able to make films. You know, it's really it's a medium for people who have lots of money. I, however, did not come from lots of money. I mean, I grew up dirt poor. My parents got divorced when I was 9, and I've had jobs since I was 9 years old. Newspaper routes, worked at restaurants, video store, whatever. Shit jobs to do whatever I could to be effectively self-made. And I'm still not a financial success, but at least enough where I'm able to now I can make choices. Okay, I'm you know, entrenched in the middle class, and here I am. Now I can choose what I do. But in order to get started, everybody has to have a McJob. It's a requirement. I want to be specific and tell you exactly.
That was good. No,
because I think being specific is going to help you better because those stories are interesting.
Yeah.
That was how I did it, was transferring home movies to videotape.
That was great.
And I might add that transferring home movies to videotape was also the job of the killer in the Manhunter books. Just throwing that out. You know, Manhunter movie. Red Dragon was the novel. But, Manhunter books. Let me rephrase that. But I also want to put the killer in the Red Dragon Manhunter movie. But I never killed anybody. That I knew beforehand.
Yet.
Uncomfortable pause.
So, being somebody that loves comics, as you put it.
Yes. Can I show? It's a huge comic book collection, boxes and boxes. I read Watchmen once a year. Now is the time to read Watchmen again. Yeah, and Dark Knight, among others. I put them in rotation.
Those are books that everybody's mentioned in terms of.
Yeah. No, I mean Watchmen to me. Watchmen is probably the most important comic book. I hate even calling it that. That was written last century. I mean,
just in terms of pulling it out of superhero.
Just everything about that book. It's had a tremendous impact, and not just on the comics medium, on films, just in so many areas, television. I think that comic book is so layered, so smart. That's why I read it every time and I see more stuff. It's so good. I know they're talking about doing a movie, I hope they don't fuck it up. I think it's two different mediums. I really don't think that what makes Watchmen special, what makes it unique, what makes it epic, it can be captured in a movie. I really think it's a miniseries. It's an epic miniseries that would cost $100 million. And I hope that they would have the balls to spend it.
A couple $100 million. Yeah. So the question though is, what makes comics interesting and fun? What has kept comics? I guess this is the second question. Mm-hmm. What has kept comics from attaining the same?
I can tell. I have the answer to that.
Relevance as film.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, what has kept comics from being as mass a medium as, say, television or movies is the choices now. The choices now that kids have. I read comic books because it was a habit that I created when I was a kid and had a newspaper route, and used to go to Rexall Drugs once a week, and I would spend 25 cents on a comic book. And that was a habit that I had. Okay, you know what we have now? We have the internet. And teenagers spend 15, 20 hours a week on the internet, more time on the internet than watching television. Kids have video games now that are so sophisticated, they look real. I had little dots, when I was a kid. So it's a question of a generational shift. Kids growing up now don't read comic books because it's not in their habits to do so. I mean, Marvel keeps the comic books going as a way to kind of keep them in print and to keep those characters light. But they make more money on the video games than any other aspect, even more than the movies. Yeah, you should ask Avi Arad about that. It's the believe me, those video games tied to releases of movies, the video games tied to things that happen also in the comic books, all by design, all by design. They make more money on the video games than any other aspect of that business and it's I don't even know if you call it the comic book business anymore when it comes to superheroes. It's really the franchise business, the T-shirt business, we're gonna get the movie part business. You know, it's creating a character and then licensing it across all mediums: video games, comic books, T-shirts, internet, film, TV, music.
So then, if you were, so other than it being a habit, though, if you were to try to explain to somebody that there is something interesting in comics other than the fact that it's a habit that you've created for yourself.
Well, that explains. I think that explains the erosion. I think the erosion has to do with kids growing up today don't read comic books like they used to. I'm not a curmudgeon about it. I mean, whatever. You know, video games is a different storytelling medium. It's fascinating, you know, like stories from, you know, Legend of Zelda or whatnot. You know, these are amazing video games that have stories that are incredible. So it's storytelling in a different form. I think what I like most about comic books is the random access nature of it. The fact that I create the sounds, I create the voices, I fill in certain parts with my own imagination. You know, it's what makes reading a novel so amazing, that experience. Comics is just another way. Now we're going to show it to you with pictures. And we're going to show the pictures in a certain order that we're going to tell you, we're going to lead you to believe one thing, and then we're going to flip it, and we're going to do something different. There are things that comic books do that I think require something more on the part of the reader, not as much as with the pictures, because you're seeing stuff. You get to see the visuals. You know, a novel, you're creating pictures in your head using words and adjectives and all the good tools. But a film is pretty much, film and television is passive, is more passive. It's turn it on, veg, I'm going to watch. I am under the control of the people who created this. They now will feed me, and I'm seeing it all pictured. There's no imagination required to see a film or watch a television show. No imagination required. There's a little bit required when it comes to comic books. There's a lot required when it comes to books. I think as you sort of move those, there's fewer and fewer people, fewer and fewer audience. It's like something I heard David Lynch say once. You know, I don't know if this applies to this. I should not. Well, David Lynch has a great quote where he talks about Steven Spielberg, and he says millions and millions of people love the films that Steven Spielberg makes. Thousands and thousands of people like the films that I make. And he's just being honest. It's the more the riskier the venture, the more it may be kind of odd and off. The more your audience is going to shrink. Same thing with the more you require on the part of the consumer, the more that's required of them, the less the audience will be. It's disheartening to see how few books a best-selling book translate to. I mean, it's not as much as one would think. And you can do the research, and I'm sure you can do a little thing about like books and what book sales are, and book sales eroding constantly. But I mean, I'm asking not only for your time, I'm asking you to put the effort in. You read it. You're not going to press a button. You're not going to just sit there and experience it. You read this. You fill in the details. You do all the voices. You do the music. It depended a lot on your imagination. I hate to bring this up, but I saw the pilot that MTV did for the Peter Baggy Hate cartoon. And I couldn't stand Buddy Bradley's voice. He kind of sounds like this. It's Buddy Bradley. Yeah. I didn't imagine Buddy Bradley talking like that. I thought he was more of a stoner slacker kind of guy. Kind of that sounded like me. But, I digress. It's, it kind of ruined my imagination for the comic book was to actually see the Peter Baggy Hate cartoon and to hear Buddy Bradley when I'd been hearing him in my head for years reading Neat Stuff and Hate. I mean, God, why'd you do that, Peter Baggy? How could you do that to me? Anyways, you know what? You could probably get footage from that to illustrate it.
You think?
Yeah, dude, come on, you're a producer. All this stuff, you know, the stuff that I'm talking about and stuff, it's boring to watch people talk.
Oh, no, I know. I know.
I hope that what you'll fill in, you'll get clearance for stuff, and you'll show the comics. You'll show a photo of me working at the video store. You'll show, I mean, I just did all the extras for my Big Fat Independent Movie DVD, and I produced all the, and like every time someone talks about something, we cut to it, because you want to, that's more interesting than watching someone talk. So if you need anything after this, I mean, I can send you stuff.
Oh, definitely. I'll definitely be contacting you again.
Yeah, but the Peter Baggy hate, I thought the producer was a friend of Peter Baggy's. Peter Baggy's not a hard guy to get a hold of.
Well, no, I can get a hold of him through Fantagraphics, because I was actually up there. You asked
Oh, great.
me who else I interviewed. I interviewed Gary Groth and Kim Thompson.
Oh, God, Groth, great guy.
Yeah.
Smart guy. What was he like, interviewing?
He was great.
He can be an angry guy, too.
He was very gracious.
No, but yeah.
But he was like...
He had to share battles.
Other than you,
I really
he was
admire
the
him.
busiest guy, so...
Really?
Yeah.
He was busier than me, even?
Yeah.
Wow. In terms of, like, what, distractions?
Everything, yeah. Just in terms... And how much time he could give me. It was basically the same thing, like...
Yeah, I gotta be, like, I got stuff I gotta address. So, last question?
Last question. Where do ideas come from?
Oh, my God. Where do ideas come from? God, I think, well, two things. One, I think they come from experiencing other art. So they definitely come from, you know, other art that you experience. They also come from life experience. So combining life experience and other art, which are your influences and experiences form ideas of your own. You know, when you look at, say, Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs or even Pulp Fiction, I mean, they were very influenced by exploitation films of the 70s. I mean, Reservoir Dogs in particular was an homage to a film called City on Fire directed by Ringo Lam. So Quentin has discussed this after much prodding, after fans noticed this. George Lucas, when you look at the Star Wars movies, you know, almost nothing is original in the Star Wars movies except for the lightsaber. That was something we'd never seen before, the lightsaber. So there's almost nothing original in the Star Wars movies. You know, the Star Wars movies, I like to say George Lucas just put all these influences into a blender and pushed puree, the myth blender. So he used a little Joseph Campbell myth, a little B-movie serial, a bunch of science fiction ideas from different sources, the movie Dune, or the book Dune, this stuff. I mean, all these things that he had experienced at the time, put them in a blender, puree, and there's almost nothing original in the Star Wars films. I mean, look, Darth Vader is Dr. Doom in a black costume. Okay?
But
Dr. Doom from the Fantastic Four in a black costume is Darth Vader. Let's face it. Although, I'll take the worst of the Star Wars movies and compare it against that Fantastic Four movie anytime, and I think Fantastic Four loses. I'm sorry. I thought that movie was crap. And I was like, to me, Fantastic Four, that was my gateway comic book. That was the comic book I read when I was 6 years old and fell in love with the Fantastic Four and had to buy every comic book and read every edition and got overly emotional when certain things happened. You know, I can't believe they're breaking up the team. The Fantastic Four aren't together. And they do that every other issue now, so, you know.
So is...
Did I give you a good answer?
Yeah.
Influences and experience form ideas. I think I even said that in one part.
So there's nothing to do with talent or creativity, and are those separate from ideas?
Well, yeah. I mean, you asked where they come from. One would assume that anybody attempting to create it, because there are, you know, one would assume that anyone attempting to create has at least some talent because they know they want to create. Most people, this is going to be a bad generalization, most people who work at a job where they fix cars, they're not thinking about creating. They're thinking about fixing cars. Strippers are not going to write the great American novel. And although there have been strippers who have written novels, actually. But for the most part, 90% are not thinking about writing a book or doing something creative. That means you want to. You need to have the desire first. The desire, talent, some talent you have to have, you're just born with. The other is learned. You know, you have to learn those because they're techniques. You know, that you need to master in any medium, whether it's playing an instrument, whether it's different types of drawing, whether it's different types of styles of writing, whether it's different types of styles of filmmaking. You know, talent combined with talent inherent, talent learned, combined with influences and experience and desire and passion. You should put these words up because I'm going to forget them all. That will be channeled into something worth experiencing.
All right.
That's about all I got.